Imagine a Viking king whose name is barely known today, but who conquered lands that stretched across Europe. A leader so powerful, yet forgotten by time. This king didn't just raid villages. He built an empire that spanned nations. But why is his name not as celebrated as other Viking legends? Stay with us as we uncover the lost story of this remarkable figure who changed the course of history and whose achievements deserve far more recognition. This is not just another Viking tale filled with endless bloodshed and battles. This is a story about a king who, despite the odds, rose from humble beginnings to rule vast territories, leaving a legacy that profoundly shaped the future of Europe. You may have heard of famous Viking figures like Ragnar Lothbrok or Harald Hardrada, whose stories are often told, but the tale we're about to dive into is different. It's about a king who almost slipped through the cracks of history, yet who, in many ways, was just as significant. By the end of this video, you'll understand why his story matters and how it fits into the grand picture of Europe's past. In the world of Viking history, the name King Sweyn Forkbeard might not be as widely known, and that's the reason this story needs to be told. His name doesn't echo through history as loudly as some of his contemporaries, but his actions shaped the future of Europe in ways that we still feel today. Most people have heard of Ragnar, his descendants, or the famous Viking invasions of England, but Sweyn's journey is one of unexpected rise, incredible feats, and surprising falls. Sweyn Forkbeard wasn't born into power. His early life was far from royal. Born around 960 AD in Denmark, he was the son of King Harald Bluetooth, who was credited with uniting Denmark and converting the Danes to Christianity. Yet Sweyn's path to power was not one of inheritance or easy rule. His father's reign was marked by political instability, with internal strife and challenges from external forces, making it a turbulent time for young Sweyn. Growing up, Sweyn witnessed a weakening of his father's authority. This was a time when Viking kings were not only trying to maintain power within their own lands, but also contend with rival factions and emerging kingdoms. Sweyn's ambition would eventually drive him to challenge his father for the throne. This act of rebellion against Harald Bluetooth set the stage for his future as a ruler who would not shy away from conflict. Sweyn wasn't content with just being a local king. He had larger ambitions. His rise to power would mark a turning point in Viking history, one that would see him conquering kingdoms far beyond Denmark's borders. As a young man, Sweyn was known for his fierce ambition. In fact, he rebelled against his father in a bid to seize control of Denmark. Sweyn even managed to force Harald out of power. However, Sweyn was no ordinary Viking prince. He was not simply interested in raiding villages or taking what he could. He was a king who wanted to establish his legacy in a way that few Vikings had ever done before. Sweyn looked at Europe, and unlike many of his contemporaries, he saw opportunities for conquest beyond the shores of Scandinavia. Sweyn's ambition was evident as he began to push his influence into the neighboring lands. Denmark was his home base, but his eyes were set on something much larger, England. England at the time was facing significant internal turmoil, with the Anglo-Saxon kings struggling to hold on to power. The infamous King Athelred the Unready was on the throne, a leader unable to defend England from the growing threat of Viking invasions. This instability created the perfect opportunity for Sweyn Forkbeard to make his move. In 1013, Sweyn launched a full-scale invasion of England. What followed was a series of brutal battles, skirmishes, and sieges, ultimately resulting in Sweyn being declared King of England. His rule, though short, would mark the first time a Viking had managed to take control of the English throne. Sweyn's success was remarkable. He was not just another Viking raider. He was now a king of a major European kingdom. His reign was brief, lasting only a few months, but was significant in that it marked the beginning of Viking domination in England. Sweyn's victory in England was followed by several more years of conflict, but it was his son, Nut the Great, who would later build upon his father's achievements. Nut would go on to become one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, creating a North Sea empire that included England, Denmark, Norway, and parts of Sweden. However, it's important to note that without Sweyn's daring conquest of England, Nut's rise to power would have been much more difficult. In many ways, Sweyn Forkbeard paved the way for his son's future success. Yet, Sweyn's ambition didn't stop in England. While he was focused on consolidating power in Denmark and England, He also sought to expand his control over Scandinavia. He worked tirelessly to claim influence in Norway, and even had designs on parts of Sweden. His kingdom stretched across vast territories, making him one of the most significant Viking rulers of his time. Sweyn's vision wasn't just about gaining power. He was building an empire that spanned the North Sea and beyond. What's fascinating about Sweyn's rule is the way he combined Viking tradition with the growing political structures of the time. Sweyn didn't just raid and plunder. He ruled with a sense of order, diplomacy, and strategy. He worked to build alliances with other rulers in Europe, creating a network of support that made his empire stronger. He may have been a Viking at heart, but he was also a shrewd political leader. Well aware that to secure his power, he had to play the game of diplomacy as well as warfare. However, despite all his accomplishments, Sweyn Forkbeard is often overshadowed by his son, Nut the Great. Nut's reign, which saw the creation of the North Sea Empire, is often hailed as one of the greatest achievements in Viking history. As a result, Sweyn's contributions are sometimes forgotten. His reign was cut short by his death in 1014, but even in his short time as king, Sweyn proved that the Vikings were more than just raiders. They were conquerors and empire builders. In many ways, Sweyn's story represents the complexity of Viking history. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a visionary, a man who understood the political and military dynamics of his time. His ability to unite Viking forces and challenge established kingdoms showed the world that the Vikings were a force to be reckoned with not just in battle, but in shaping the future of Europe. Sweyn Forkbeard's legacy is crucial for understanding the Viking Age. His conquest of England marked a significant chapter in European history. His rise to power and his ambition to build an empire proved that the Vikings were not just mercenaries. They were political leaders with a vision to conquer and rule vast territories. While he may not have enjoyed a long reign, his actions laid the foundation for the North Sea Empire and the Viking influence that would last for generations. Sweyn Forkbeard's story is one of ambition, bravery, and vision, traits that set him apart from many other Viking kings. In an era where conquest and survival were often the only things that mattered, Sweyn saw beyond mere pillaging and destruction. He understood that power could be secured through strategy, diplomacy, and the creation of lasting empires. His brief reign, though overshadowed by his son Nut the Great, left a permanent mark on the map of Europe. His success in taking the English throne, although fleeting, was a testament to his ability to capitalize on the weaknesses of his enemies, and his vast ambitions reshaped the political landscape of Northern Europe. What makes Sweyn's story particularly captivating is the way it challenges our typical image of the Vikings. We often think of them as fierce raiders, quick to strike and leave destruction in their wake. But Sweyn's legacy reveals a more complex picture, a leader who didn't just live for the thrill of battle, but saw the long-term potential in building something bigger than himself. Sweyn Forkbeard was not just another Viking warrior. He was a visionary who understood the significance of land, power, and legacy. While many Viking kings were content with raiding and ruling small regions, Sweyn aimed for much more. His conquest of England and his influence in Scandinavia proved that the Vikings could not only conquer, but could also rule and create lasting kingdoms. His story is also a reminder of how easily history can forget important figures. Today, Sweyn Forkbeard's name doesn't carry the same weight as other Viking legends, but in his time, his accomplishments were nothing short of monumental. His ability to unite Viking forces, his vision of a greater empire, and his successful conquest of a kingdom as powerful as England showed just how capable he was. While his reign was short-lived, the foundations he laid allowed his son, Nut the Great, to rise and build upon them. In many ways, Sweyn's contribution was a spark that ignited the Viking Empire. We should take a moment to reflect on the importance of telling these forgotten stories. In an age where historical narratives are often dominated by the most famous figures, it's easy to overlook those who played vital roles in shaping history. Sweyn Forkbeard might not have enjoyed the long-lasting fame of other Viking leaders, but his story deserves recognition. It's a story of daring ambition, ruthless conquest, and an unyielding pursuit of power. Without him, the Vikings may not have had the same foothold in Europe, and the history of England and Scandinavia could have unfolded in a completely different way. In the grand scope of Viking history, Sweyn Forkbeard may be a footnote, but his story is one that speaks to the broader themes of perseverance, leadership, and the ever-changing course of history. His life challenges us to reconsider what it means to be a true conqueror, not just in battle, but in the way we shape the future. And while his name may not have the same recognition as some of his contemporaries, his actions echo through the centuries, shaping the Viking legacy in ways we're still discovering today. If you've enjoyed learning about Sweyn Forkbeard and the forgotten kings of Viking history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There are many more untold stories in the past that deserve to be uncovered, and we'll continue to bring you engaging content that sheds light on the figures who shaped the world. History has so many layers, and every story adds a new dimension to our understanding of the past. So, join us as we continue to explore the untold, the lost, and forgotten stories of history. Stay tuned, and let's keep uncovering the past together.